Looks better already. Hello friends, thank you for joining me today. My grandson suggested this morning that I should start a weekly art adventure. Since daily art adventure seems to be kaput, maybe I should do that. Is that right, Izzy? There's Izzy who had the suggestion.
Yes.
And there's Tolly. They're with us for a week. They always love to be on camera. So there we go. Whoops, missed one. There's Lakey Poo. And there's one sleeping at the moment, which is unusual. All right, hey, my name's Dan. Maybe you already know that. And I've been happily engaged on this project that's been hanging over me, of course. I'll show you. I'll show you one of the things I do. I wasn't planning to do this, but here's one thing you do with old paintings. You cut them into bookmarks, and you sign each bookmark. And by the way, these make really nice bookmarks. I mean, they're just the right thickness and so on and so forth. That is, they mark the books really well. Anyway, so I have several hundred of these in a basket, and I sell these for $1 each. You buy a Dan Nelson original for $1. I sell them typically at festivals when I'm painting at a festival, and of course that means at the most I could get $25 from one painting cut into $1 strips, and that is certainly not worth it, except I've just discovered this. Well, of course it's marketing, of course, yes. And then I've discovered at a festival, dang, if I sell 10 of them, that's enough for an elephant ear or a turkey leg or any number of other animal body parts. Anyway, so that's what you do with old paintings. You cut them up, you throw them out, of course, you burn them, or you try to fix them. Now this is brand new. This was actually out in a one of those like coffee shop kind of galleries, not a real gallery, because it's a friend. I don't hang my artwork in coffee shops anymore, thank goodness. But this was a friend, blah blah blah. So this just came back to me. Yes, he brought it, delivered it to my house yesterday. That one's not bad. I like it quite a bit, but of course I think I can do better now. Now this one is 8 or 9 years old. Again, this is very much my old style. You can tell by the sharp blue sky and the sharp outline of the trees. That's another story. I'll get into that later. I was doing something very different back in this day, and it was fun and it was good, and it led to what I'm doing now, but I don't do this now, so I might try to touch that up. Let me show you a couple paintings just for fun. Now, I wish I had printed off a copy of each of these paintings before I fixed them, but real quickly, and you can go back and watch me work on these last week. This was a 12-year-old painting, very much my old style, much redder than this. It's still pretty red, and that's fine, but changed it to more or less my current style. Here's one that I'm quite happy with. This is not a very old painting at all, maybe 3 years old at the most. Whoa, and that's a horrible glare. Hang on, let me see if I can get a little bit better. This was from my annual trip to Ocracoke, North Carolina. That's an island in the Atlantic. If you know your geography, then that's a joke, of course, whatever. Anyway, and basically, I just added these two figures. That's almost, well, no, and I added the skyline or horizon ocean in this one, which is, I think, a distinct improvement. So there you go. By the way, since I'm here, let me talk about this for a minute. Me and my buddy Mike, the two of us have been going to Ocracoke every summer for 7 years. And it's an island, very small island, population 500 people or something like that. And I discovered while painting there that anytime you can take a landscape painting, if you can finagle an ocean skyline, what am I looking at? Ocean horizon in the painting, if you just figure out some way to squeeze it in, it instantly becomes a better and more marketable painting. So I added this. I don't know if you can picture that, but a couple days ago, it was all solid woods. It was just green. It was just foliage up there. And then I said, wait a minute, I'm missing an opportunity. And almost nobody that's been to Ocracoke would actually look at this painting and say, wait a minute, that ain't right, because you can see the ocean from almost everywhere, folks. So anyway, I think that's a real successful rescue. It was a bit of a challenge, adding new elements because of my technique, which is made of so many layers. I can't just paint it. I have to paint it in layers. Anyway, very happy with that, and I'm going to try to learn 2 lessons. 1, put people in a painting makes it better, and number 2, don't forget to do that ocean thing. All right, let me show you another one that I worked on actually just this morning a little while. This was a painting from my hometown, Petoskey, Michigan, actually Bayview, Michigan. And this is at least 12 years old. It was very much in my old style. More abstract, harder edged, and cleaner. In fact, I've got another painting here. Here we go. Here's another one from that same period. You'll see what I mean by cleaner, harder edged, and abstract in a way. So there you go. That's likewise Bayview, Michigan. This is horrible. We'll come back and talk about that later, about what to do about that painting. All right? Let me finish. I'm not going to show all of them that I'm working on. Okay, here's one that I'm really, let me come back to this. I don't know if I'm finished with this one or not. It has a lot of nice elements. Let me turn off this glare for you for just a minute. Yeah, I guess that's a little better. It has a lot of nice elements. I'll tell you what concerns me a little bit about it is the overall composition. It's a little bit fly-apart-ish. That's seen most obviously in the light bits, the light parts of the painting. Let me show you how many light bits there are, and they're all not connected. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll call those midtones. 7. Let's call this all one piece. If I call that 1, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7, 8. I can count that as so 7, 6 really. All right, and that's a problem. Let me now count the dark areas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they're all not connected. Are you with me so far? This is the makings of a bad composition often. So I have 7 light areas, all separated, and then I just counted 8 dark areas, all separated. That's a problem. And then mid-tone areas, well, 1, 2, okay, so the mid-tones are everywhere in between, and they're quite connected. So using this one system of analysis, this is one among many. According to one system of analysis, you have, which fingers do I want to use here? You have light areas, dark areas, and mid-tone areas. And the one rule is that 2 of those 3 are supposed to be contiguous, touching, connected. And this fails that test because definitely all the light areas are disconnected and all the dark areas are disconnected. So if this principle is right, and of course, please understand, painting by principle is a fool's errand. You don't paint by principle. You really don't. Man. But if you don't know the principles, you're probably just screwing up and you don't realize it. That's way too deep subject. But now there's one thing that I'm thinking, is there some way that I could connect the dark areas? And let me just think out loud with you for a minute. So right now, several bits, by the way, the horse and buggy is brand new. That's the main thing I did to this painting is I made it messy. I made it my current style, much more atmospheric perspective, and simplified the light and dark a little, intensified the light and dark. But here's a dark area, and then right close to it is another dark area. Boom, 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 and that goes up here. If I could find some good excuse, like just put a bush in here to the right of the horse, and maybe down here, if I could make this all one dark area, and maybe this dark area, I don't know. And of course, everything's relative. What is dark, what is light? There's nothing in here that's extremely dark. A few bits, the horse's poop bucket or tail back there is real dark. Just some good theory, some good theoretical questions for you. Now, here's another one where I'm having a real problem. I've worked on this one once or twice now since I got it out. And this is not a very old painting either. This is also ochre coke. You may wonder, why do I have so many paintings from, and the answer is because evidently I've done too many of my ochre coke paintings are bad for some reason. So explain that. I should stop going there, shouldn't I? Mike, I quit. I'm kidding. All right, and what I did to this painting is the same. There is a bit of a theme here, by the way. I added this man and boy, presumably father and son, and I added this old man in a rocking chair. Okay, so they were not in the original painting. Let me tell you, anybody that knows ochre coke, though, would recognize this building immediately. It's a very accurate, very representational. Built on a wharf out over the water. It's the old fisherman's, I don't know what they call it, but it's an old building. And again, very iconic and historic ochre coke. And again, I've already worked on it. But here's the mistake that I made. I remember the day I painted this. I did it en plein air. Did it, set up my easel right there by the water and painted it in about 4 hours. And that was the mistake. It's like as soon as I finished the 4 hours, I went, darn it. Mistake. I gave myself too much time. Had too much fun, if you will, standing there, got too finicky, got too tight, got too detailed, got too accurate. All those words overlap, and they all come too tight, accurate, realistic, and so forth. I should have painted it faster. So I've actually messed it up a good bit in my fixing. And I'm not done yet because I want to do a little bit of light, not much. I want to pull focus. I don't want to, I want the light here, but I want a little bit of highlight on the man and boy. Beyond that, a little bit more light in the water. Since I've added light here, I want to add some of the water. But beyond that, I'm really not sure what's wrong with this painting. And that irritates me considerably. How can I, being, so to speak, a good artist, quote unquote, you know what I mean? I'm just want you to enter into this because you feel the same way. You say to yourself, how can I, a darn good artist, be standing here looking at a painting and can't figure out why it's not sizzling, why it's not hot, why it's not cooking, why don't I go, bang, that's a good painting, which I do to a lot of my paintings, you understand? And I don't know. Now it could be that it's better than I think, and I'm just sick of looking at it. That's a possibility. But no, I think there's something about it. I think the only person who would buy this painting would be somebody who loves Ocracoke, North Carolina. because they go, oh, that's that building, and it's a great painting, so to speak, of that building. All right, now let's get on to. I'm surrounded here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right now, 8 paintings around me that are all in. That I would like to fix that I would like to fix. Okay. Let me try to figure out which one. I might go back to the very first one that I had up there when I started the broadcast. It doesn't need too much work. Yeah, let's start with this one. Okay, the first thing I do. No, I don't consider myself an expert at this necessarily at all. Hello, Radina. Nice to see you today. Oh, Radina, is it 2 pastel? Which one were you talking about? Darn it, I missed your comment. All right. I just dipped this cotton rag in Gamsol. And I'm just wiping off, because this painting is probably about 4 years old. Not real old. And so it's pretty much in my current state, with the exception of it doesn't have any, this is a dry rag now, with the exception of it doesn't have any pencil in it. That's no big deal. I don't have to have pencil in all my paintings, although I do it because I like it. So there you go. I might find myself. Let me talk about it just a little bit. First of all, I know approximately when I did this painting, because I've painted this scene 5 or 6 times, because it's one that I use frequently when I teach a painting class. All right, so this was done as a demo in a painting class. And it's not bad. Let me talk about in fact, let me pick you up for a second and give you a real close look. Let me tell you about some of the things that I like about this painting before I start talking about the things that I'm not so sure about. I really do like the sky. And again, try to ignore the glare. If I point you down, there you go. So done very spontaneously. I can tell that it was done I have a particular technique for rendering sky, which I probably won't get to today because I'm not going to repaint the sky. I like this atmosphere stuff here. I pretty much like the fast rendering of this tree. And this one, not too bad. I like the shed. I like the light in the window, and so on and so forth. All right, that's the stuff I like. Well, what on earth could I not like? Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. This is not a terrible painting, so I'm not embarrassed of this one. I wouldn't mind. Hang on, I'm trying to get you all straightened away. Thanks, Radina. Last one, got it. It may be 2 pastel. Yeah. Let me widen out. I just want to talk to you guys just a bit. As you may know, I'm not painting an awful lot these days. So I find my mental process different than it was, say, a year ago, the last 17 years, when I've been painting, especially early on, like a crazy banshee. I mean, when I became a full-time oil painter, after decades of being a full-time illustrator, get it? So it's not, don't. I started oil painting when I was about, 20 years ago, mid-40s. But don't let me mislead you. I was a full-time professional artist for decades before that. I just did everything but oil painting. All right. But when I entered the world of fine art, that is selling paintings at galleries, 2004, 5, 6, 7, when I look back now, I shake my head. I painted like a man on fire. I'm glad I did. I had a lot to learn because I was a beginner oil painter. But I painted like a just crazy man. I painted fast. I painted frequently. I painted all day and all night. Almost. I'm exaggerating, of course. And why am I telling you all that? Oh, because I'm in a very different space. Now, the last couple years, I haven't been quite that crazy, but it's still, daily art adventure. You can go back and see my 1004 daily art adventures. Still painting at a pretty good clip. And now I've slowed way down because now I'm a full-time musician pastor. By the way, you will eventually hear me playing my music. That's a long story. Me and my friends had our first performance in downtown Raleigh last Friday evening, and it was outrageous. It was amazing. Anyway, so eventually you'll hear about it. You'll hear it. Anyway, so I'm a part-time painter, and I find myself in a very different mental place because, like many of you, if that painting is your hobby, I'm more like you now. I have long, slow periods of rumination, thinking, meditating, thinking about painting, and then short periods of doing it. I find this very interesting, a new place for me. And some of my rumination in the last several weeks has been along these lines. Now, this only applies to those of us artists who are pursuing beauty. You understand, of course, don't you, that if you're like me and you're trying to paint beautiful things, then we are on the out of the art establishment, right? The art establishment eschews Gesundheit. The art establishment despises beauty, to put it too bluntly. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Many of us are involved in beauty. That's a big question. But I'm combining these two concepts, beauty and imagination. It turns out, and you test me on this, this is half-baked theory, and I'm giving you my half-baked theory. Turns out you can't paint any better than you can imagine. And that's part of the reason why the greatest painters among us throughout all history have been the great painters they are. Because somehow they're able to see, imagine is a key word, before it exists, something better. So what I find myself doing with like with this painting, it's like, oh, well darn it. That's a pretty nice painting. In fact, as I look at it right now, here, I won't pick you up, but this bit of abstract work right here, this is obviously a path, right? A road, and then there's grass, taupe, beige, tan, brown grass here, and green grass here, and the brush treatment there, I think, dang, that's some good painting right there. I think the same thing about the very edge. This is a bit of palette knife right there. A palette knife stroke and then messing it up. Dang, that's some good painting. All right, so, but it doesn't do me any good. I'm not any better. If I can't imagine, anyway, let me just focus it. So I'm standing here saying, can I imagine this scene, basically this painting? I'm not going to start over and do another one. I just want to tweak this one. Can I imagine it better than this? Are you with me? That's a challenge. Very intuitive. Once again, as I stand here staring at this, I go, wow, you know what? That's the sky holes, quote unquote, in this, in my opinion, very well done. Don't want to ruin that, grinding the gears. What? Because, okay, so I will tell you, I think I can do better. And I'm not being a perfectionist. I am very happy with many of my paintings, and I'm fairly happy. I would say this is a B+ at least, maybe even an A- painting. Okay? What I'm trying to imagine is how can I turn this into an A+ painting? And okay, let me start talking now. I've got some ideas. A focal point here, 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 right? Definitely right in there. But that's a focal area, focal zone. I don't know which is the focalist point in there. The lightest bit is right there. The sharpest bit is this, and then this is extremely okay. So there's a couple things. One is I think the rendering. And when I use that word, I mean realistic drawing. The rendering got a little sloppy right in here. A little tangent. I'm sorry. If you're a regular, you might have heard this. I have in the last year forsworn using the term loose painting. I don't use it except by mistake, and I recommend not using it because the word loose is I'm convinced sends early journey painters after a red herring, sends them down a wrong trail, because loose sounds like sloppy, inaccurate drawing. And that is not what good painting is, not inaccurate drawing. So instead of saying loose painting, I use the term energetic brush strokes. Do you see? So here, indeed, it's loose in the bad way, bad drawing, sloppy drawing. This could be tightened up. So that's one thing I can do. Let me, again, talk what doth a good painting make. One of the things that human beings like seeing in a painting is accurate rendering, realistic drawing. Now, every art professor in the 20th century is turning over all the dead ones are turning over in their graves if they heard me say that, because they think realism is bad. They're wrong. And that's all I'm going to say. Okay, so let me point out some places that I think the drawing could be beefed up. The roof here, this maybe is okay. The fence here, just tighten it up a little bit. This tree could be rendered a little better. This pole, I don't know that by rendering, I don't mean tighter, okay, but just a little bit more accurate. Now, for some reason, there is something, and this is very intuitive. It's almost impossible to put into words because it's so intuitive. Oh, you're wondering if both of those. No, the horse and buggy one is definitely not too pastel-y. The water one might be too pastel-y, which I would take to mean, I'm answering Adina's question, which means inadequate darks often. Quite a few darks, quite darks down here, but you might be right. All right, sorry, little detour. Let's get back to all right. There is something about the brow, the crest of this hill. Oh, by the way, where is this? This scene is in Monument, Colorado. I was there. Well, this is 10 or 12 years ago. Trespassing on the property of an old farm, old ranch, walking around with my camera taking pictures, right? I'm looking west into the sunset, and these buildings are very, very roughly accurate. All right, so that's where this is. And this hill is fairly representational, but there's something about it that I don't quite like. And I think this is kind of crazy. Let me find a tape measure here. 18 by 24. Yep, it's about as small as I normally like to do a painting. 16 by 20 is, anyway, so if it's 18, this right here is the center, the exact center. So it's enough above the center to not break that rule. However, we've talked about this before. I'm assuming that most of you know the rule a horizon should not be in the middle. Right? That's the rule. I'm assuming you know that. The problem is there are many things that make a horizon. I'm not going to give the full lecture. I'm just going to try to summarize here. Here, I'll use a big fat brush handle to make the point. In this painting, there are at least 2, if not 3 horizons. One is this right here, which, as you saw, is about 1 inch above the center of the canvas. There's a very strong horizon right here. The fence, the shift from the field to the background. And so there's one horizon here and there's one horizon here. Now, it gets even more complicated because from here up to here is essentially the same shape, the same unit. This feels like a shape in here. Are you with me? So that means there's a shape that goes right there. And that's, the middle of that shape is just about 1/3 or 2/5 from the bottom of the canvas. There's another horizontal line that's very important right here. And there's anyway, so the whole bunch of horizons. 1, 2, 3, 4. And none of that doesn't matter, except that I feel like there's something wrong with this one. So I'm finally going to start painting. Forgive me for all this talking. I know I'm acting like a professor. I confess that. Here's what I'm going to start painting on this hill. I'm going to employ one of my recent mantras, which is it's virtually impossible to have too much atmospheric perspective. In a landscape painting, virtually impossible to have too much atmospheric perspective. So I'm going to start taking steps in that general direction. Now, you understand, don't you, that this painting is very, very dry, right? It's at least 3 or 4 years old. So I can do whatever I want to this painting and wipe it all off. So I'm going to, since that gives me a great deal of freedom to play around, because I can't mess it up. If I do something I don't like, I just break up the rag and wipe it all off. So I've been over here at my palette mixing up a little bit of permanent rose, which is a cool purplish transparent red, and Naples yellow, which is like yellow ochre but lighter, and a little bit of ultramarine, because I'm just experimenting, toying with the idea, what would happen if instead of making this like all one mountain, if I broke it into 2 mountains, and the upper one, the further one, of course, is further away, therefore lost, so to speak, in haze, lost in atmosphere. Now, I'm not sure this is a good idea. Do you understand? There's definitely a luxury involved here because I'm painting on a dry painting. I couldn't do this on a wet painting because I couldn't remove this paint. Let me go back to why am I doing this? Because there's something about the shape and or the placement of that, the brow of that hill, that I found awkward. There's something about it I didn't like. So that's why I'm still leaving the hill there. I'm just pushing it. Old high school football cheerleader cheers. Let me stand back. I am definitely not, I am not out of the woods yet. I don't particularly like, that didn't do much. So I'm not going to wipe it off though. I'm going to keep painting over that. So again, what I'm doing now, I can still wipe off if I don't like it. But what I'm doing now is going to try to match this sky color. Okay? So I am going to now chop this mountain down. Again, the location of this was somewhere near Monument, Colorado, about 40 miles north of Pikes Peak, right on that highway, whichever highway it is, it runs straight south from Denver down to Pueblo and beyond, down into New Mexico. Add some yellow to that color. Whoops, too much. Does that ever happen to you? I'm sure it doesn't. Or you dip your brush in a color, and it's like, or your palette knife if you mix with a palette knife, and you just pick up too much. Well, that's what I just did, but I'm going to use it anyway. So I got too much Indian yellow, but then I thought, oh, well, maybe I like that. Maybe I like that color. Hey, you know what I didn't do in this painting? You might be thinking, wait, aren't you going to glaze it first? The answer is yes, I was, and I just forgot. Almost always. I mean, so much so that it's a rule of mine. When I go into a dry painting, and that, I mean, usually this applies to a painting that's been dry for a day, right? I worked on it yesterday and come back the next day. When I do that, I glaze any number of colors, whichever colors I want. I glaze the whole painting again. And I intended to do that here, and it just slipped my mind. Started painting, so that's all right, unless I take a rag and wipe all this off. Now, I don't know if you can tell that the mountain here, I'm actually not paying any attention to that yet. I'm focusing entirely on the sky and just a little bit on the shape. So I've changed the shape from this to this, from convex to concave, or rounded up to rounded down. And at the moment, I think I'm liking it better. You know, I wonder, and I'm just thinking out loud here, I'm not at all sure. I wonder if, since this is an up-pointing curve, so to speak, sharp curve, if it was echoing, if there was an echo there that I didn't like, because I'm definitely sensing right now. By the way, did you see how I just drew that telephone pole back up into that sky? That's where it was originally, but it was all blue hill behind it, and now I've painted anyway. I just rubbed it with the butt end of my brush. Dang, that's clever. it works because it's a variant mark. It's a nice variety. It's a different kind of stroke. That it's better than taking, say, mixing up some dark paint and going to. In fact, most of us do too much in our paintings. A little bit too much anti-ing. Very closely related to the dreaded de-dotification process, which we've talked about many times on this channel. De-dotification. That's when you stand back and say, "Oh, doggone it, I got too many dots in this painting." Tree holes, poorly done. Sky holes, I mean, they should be called tree holes. They're traditionally called sky holes. But anyway, sky holes, poorly done, turn into sky dots. We discovered that on our channel years ago. Okay, let me just step back and think about this for a minute now. I don't need to carry this intense. I mean, the color I'm putting on the brush on the canvas right now is a fairly, intense. It's bright, light value, and it's a sunset. So I don't need to carry it out to the extreme edges of the painting. That would probably be a mistake. Although all of a sudden I'm going, wait a minute, I do like a little bit of this coming up into this phthalo blue. Now that might be a mistake right there, but let's leave it for a minute. Okay, by the way, that kind of brush stroke that I did right there, that was the intention and the effect was not to smooth out, like some of you might think, oh, when you use a rag, that's to smooth out the painting. No. The rag can be used just as much to rough up a mark as to smooth out. And that's what I was trying to do there. I was not smudging or smoothing. I was making marks and lines in the paint with the brush. Now I'm smudging a little bit, but I'm going to come back and now I'm going to stand back and think about this for just a minute. I just added a noticeable amount of energy to that little corner of the painting, and I have to think about whether that was a good idea or not. I'm not sure that it was, but I'm going to leave it there for right now and think about it. Stand back. In a minute, let me. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone for a bit. Let's darken this a little tiny bit. Darken, that is to say, darken what's on my brushes here. I don't want that much light way over here. I have to be careful not to get toward, isn't it? Fussy, tight. Keep it, let it stay abstract. By the way, that is one of the, of course, I think we all have that problem. Almost, well, 99% of us have the problem of painting too tight. The answer is not loose, the answer is energy. But one of the reasons, some of you, and myself as well sometimes, one of the reasons we fall into the tight trap is because, I'll pick on you for now. I say it's because you give yourself too much time to finish your painting. You give yourself all the time in the world. And you paint, many of you paint more poorly, you paint worse the longer you paint. Whereas if you would paint really fast, you'd actually paint better. That is certainly the case. That is true about me. It's true about many of you as well. About time somebody told you that. I think I do like that better. Now, so now the shape of this hill is hill, valley, and hill up here. Let me define that tiny, tiny bit right there. All right. Okay, I think I'm going to try to render now the brow of that hill, refine it, define it, clarify it, and shape it just a little bit. So I'm trying to mix up this, whatever that is, mostly blue, I guess. It's very gray. Almost add some pink to that and some lighten up with some titanium. Oh, and let's add some more Naples yellow to that. Now let's look at this color. Hey, you guys are chatting up a storm and I'm missing it. Radina wonders, forgive me, ask good questions. It's because my lights are cool and my darks are cool both. Darks are definitely cool. This light is definitely warm. Warm, warm. I don't think that's it. It's definitely a cool painting. Whoops, I'm sorry. Here, sorry. There, sorry. Radina keeps, thank you, Radina. I really appreciate your dialogue. So she's asking, is it because the shadows and the lights are both cool? I don't think so. The lights are warm. Although there are cool lights too. And maybe that is a mistake. So I will consider that. Whoops. And I hope I just painted this on just now. Oh good, I did. I have two paint-filled brushes in my hand and one of them just made an errant mark. Let me see what else you guys are saying. Ooh, David, good question about prices. Okay, I read all your comments, and I'm not going to try to answer them all right now. I'm going to keep painting. So here's what I'm playing around with now. The color on my brushes is almost a perfect gradation between the orange sunset and the blue hill. So one of the things I'm consciously playing with right now is the principle that I mentioned a little while ago. It's almost impossible to have too much atmospheric perspective. Now there's a corollary to that, or an unspoken corollary, I guess, to that, which is, oh, and by the way, generally speaking, human beings really get a kick out of atmospheric perspective. Let me look at that. I'm going to drag this right into the sky, softening that edge even more. And David, a couple of you asked about the shape of the hill lost. No, it's not. It's quite there. And then was it Jane who said something about the shadow of the tree? Focal point? No. No, the shadows. Now, let me. Whoops! I messed up all my earlier. The sky color, that orange. I've lost it all. My pile has disappeared. So forgive me just a minute here. I have to mix up a little bit more of that dusky orange color. By the way, I don't know about you guys. I mix my entire career. I've always mixed with brushes. I never mix with a palette knife. Never use a palette knife for what it's used for. I'm not telling you that's a good idea. It's just one of my weirdnesses, I think. Oh, that's too dark. Okay, hang on. And sometimes, because of that, then my brushes, and of course I always mix with two brushes because I paint with two brushes, which means I waste or mix up precisely twice as many brushes. Never mind. Let's get off to another subject. But eventually, I was going to say, sometimes my mixing with the brushes, they then become just overloaded with paint. I just have to wipe them off. All right, I'm going to paint with a rag now, because in fact I'm doing an experiment here and I don't like what's happening. So please be clear. Most of the time, very rarely do you erase with a rag. Very rarely. I essentially say never, but every once in a while. But that I'm not erasing now. I'm painting with a rag. What's the difference? The difference is I care very much about the marks, the feeling, the essence of the marks that I'm making with the rag. Okay, so I'm painting with a rag, not erasing. And plus, erasing almost always has the connotation of grumpiness. It's like, oh, rucka shaka, rucka, I made a mistake. You know what I mean? I call it the spirit of eraser. Don't let the spirit of eraser come on you. Because then you stop painting at that point. Whenever that grumpy thing, oh, sucker, rucka, waka, I'm such a terrible artist, I always mess up, blah, 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 blah. And some of you are afflicted by that spirit often. Just cast him out. Don't let that come on you. I'm squinting. I don't know if you can see it now. I think you can. I've got a very faint, closer hill brow coming in here, right? And I don't want it to echo this one, so I'm not going to go back up, but I'm wondering about it coming right straight down. So I'm going to try to mix up this color right here and give a little more. Right now it's so subtle, most people wouldn't even see it. Just a hodgepodge of colors. I'm working with dioxazine violet, burnt umber. All right, let's see where I'm at. Very close. A little bit more ultramarine. Nope. More dioxazine violet. Dioxazine violent. Okay. Now, this is finally, just with that last hill right there, this is finally starting to work. This is better. This is better than what was here. I've done basically two things. One is I changed a hill that was shaped this way. For some reason it was bothering me, to a hill, now a valley going this way. And then when I added this closer hill, which is slightly more purple, I'm hoping you can see it. In fact, I'm going to come back and accent that just a tiny bit by adding some haze in the valley between those two hills. Very traditional, almost in danger of being a cliche, except that especially those of us who live in North Carolina near the Smoky Mountains, it's a very, very real phenomenon that the mist, the fog, the atmosphere sits down, rests in those valleys, and picks up the light of the sky, so it becomes a little bit of a glow there. Very Bob Ross-ish even. That's even worse than Bob Timberlake-ish. All right, let me, I think I'm going to put those brushes down and pick up some new ones and try to mix up the color of the sky. Oh, I'm about to sneeze, y'all. I'm sorry. Yeehaw. Thank you. So thank you because I know somebody said bless you. All right. Quite the small brushes here. And what I hope to do with them is just give a little bit of that Smoky Mountain mist, thereby actually separating this closer hill from the one behind it. Okay, does that make sense? Never paint with your fingers. I feel like I must say that every time I paint with my fingers. And then I must say, but I don't have any toxic paints on my palette. All right, it's a little bit too defined. Let me soften it just a little bit. Okay, so I think I feel quite confident I've just made this area of the painting considerably more interesting. For one thing, this curve is better than the one that was there, and I've lowered the whole thing. For some reason, that just makes the horizon feel like it's right here. And now I've added an additional hill in there, which is not realistic at all of the scene, but that's fine with me. That doesn't bother me at all. Whew. All right, that was a lot of fuss about a very small thing, wasn't it? Okay, I'm going to change gears fairly drastically here, just for a minute. And I'm mixing up some dark, transparent, almost transparent, bluish, grayish, brownish gray, bluish gray, a little more blue, and not quite opaque because that would be too stark. So I'm adding a tiny bit of white to this mix. Sorry, I'm telling you all what I'm doing and not showing you. I feel like one of the lessons I have learned about my own painting in the last week or two while I've been fixing old paintings. One of the principles I'm filing away is like, ooh, more people, or more accurately, let me say that more accurately, more psychological focal points. I'm not going to put a person in this, but I'm thinking about putting a horse. Because that's a psychological focal point. If you're doing stairs going up to the brownstone in New York City, you put one roller skate on the stair, that's a psychological focal point. Do you understand? If you put one half-eaten sandwich on the picnic table, That's a psychological. All right, you with me? All right, so I'm going to put a horse facing that way, or straight toward us. No, it's got to be facing the barn, right? But not a horse. And as you can see, I am cheating, if you will, using the pencil for the thing that pencils are good for. Which is drawing stuff. A horse in a somnolent, is that the word? In a sleeping posture. All right, then I'm going to have to, whoops, let's see, even that's, let me zoom in here as close as I can so you can hopefully see what I'm doing, and put you right in my way so you can watch me here for a moment. So talk about finicky tongue painting, by the way, and even what you see here, when I was drawing, I changed my mind a couple times. Okay, so I'm not an expert on horses at all, but I do know that horses most of the time sleep standing up. All right, I'm not done. No, don't worry. Hang on. It's I think an okay first level. There's you all know, if you watch me at all, anytime you put dark paint on your canvas, your painting is not finished. Or be more specific, if you put dark paint in any area, like I just did, then that area is not finished, because you must follow up with light. So now I'm trying to mix up whatever this color is, kind of a greenish, bluish, gray, impossible to even identify. Let's see. Oh, that's way too bright. Hang on. Okay, how do I make it darker? Easy. Normally a little bit of raw umber, but when I was putting my paints out the other day, I didn't have any raw umber. I used burnt umber instead. Close enough. Okay, let me repeat in case there's any newcomers watching me. Anytime you put dark paint on your canvas, you're not finished. Now, believe me, I understand many of you can, especially if your art professor hears me say that, he or she can roll their eye and say that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. And then I would say, okay, show me your paintings. I don't want to even talk about you. I don't even, sorry, that's a little bit ornery, but this is the truth. Okay, so ignore me to your peril. I might be wrong. I admit I might be wrong. But if you're a lousy artist, you don't have the right to tell me I'm wrong. Boy, that sounded nasty, didn't it? What I really mean to say is, who taught me this? The answer is 50 years of being an artist. It's taught me most of these things. And hopefully I'll find a better way to express them in the future. But until I do, what I've got will have to do. Okay, so it's related to the human eye does not like to see dark paint on top of light paint. Of course, there are many times we must put dark paint on. You're with me? Like I just did. I just put dark paint on top of light paint. So there's two things you can do to alleviate this dynamic that the human eye doesn't like seeing dark paint on top of light paint. Two things you can do. One is make sure that the dark paint is transparent. Bingo. Secondly, you follow up with light paint. So that's what you see me doing right now. And I could go deeper into that, so to speak, visually, but I don't want to. Out of energy. That's just until you are better than me, just do what I say. Boy, I'm coming off sounding like a real something here. David would say that's just normal. Okay, this is not bad. It's not great either. But I'm not done. What you just saw me do is a common trick. Overdraw a thing to get it accurate, because inaccurate drawing is a turnoff to everybody. So you have to sometimes overdraw to get it accurate, and then just mess it up. Okay, and I think if I get rid of this middle leg, he's got 5 legs right now at the moment, and I'm aware of that, but again, I'm not done yet. All right, that's not bad. Little bit overdrawn still, over rendered, and that's another word for tight. But I'm reluctant to use the word tight for the same reason I'm reluctant to use the word loose. Right? Both connote the wrong thing to early journey painters. Tight or loose. So. Oh, there we go. There we go. I just fuzzed up his belly with one finger. Don't paint with your fingers. Unless you have to. Let me back up. Tell me what you think. I think I kind of like that. I think that's an improvement. And that's, again, along the lines of what I've been learning here just in the last couple of weeks about my old paintings. I've been too artsy, too artsy. When in fact I think I should, frankly, I should focus a little bit more on the picture elements. Let's see what some of you guys are saying. Analog Ghost, you go. Oh man, I'm glad you caught us, Analog Ghost. Thank you. Okay, let me just take a break. I think I'm happy with my little horse thing there. Horse thing, do you like that? Okay, I'm going to leave it for now. I wonder if there should be more of this kind of light value kind of coming in around or behind the horse, off to the left of this building. But I'm going to leave it for right now. Let's tackle one of the things I mentioned a while ago, which is the rendering of this building. At the moment, in my opinion, the way this building is drawn right here is a good example of what I would call loose painting, and that's why I don't like the term loose painting, because this in fact is poorly drawn, and that is not a good thing. Okay, loose is not an excuse for drawing poorly. Now I feel, frankly, gang, I feel like I was really late in my career, late in getting this memo. I grew up, I remember my professors in college, God rest their souls, I remember them talking, I think quite often, about loose brushwork. And if you define it the right way, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, I don't think it communicates to beginner painters the way we think it does. And a beginner painter pretty much always takes that as an excuse to draw poorly. Okay, so I'm starting with dark, a shadow underneath that eave. And that's way too much of a good thing. Okay, so I'm not gonna, this is not my last. Once again, remember, the human eye does not like to see dark paint like this on top of light paint. We like to see light on top of dark. But there are times, voila, there are times when you must do dark paint, right? So number one, make it transparent, check. Number two, follow up with light, which I'm about to do. But actually, before I even do that, I'm just going to, this is one of my tools. I don't use this tool very often, just called a clay shaper. I'm using it as a paint shaper. You're more often likely to use my the butt end of a brush to do that. I'm using, as you can see here, all really small brushes. Kind of irritating, but it's because most of the changes that I'm doing are fairly small, although this sky stuff, that was big. All right, I'm back to gray. Let me add a little violet to that color. I'm back to gray paint, essentially the color of the side of this barn, or the color it was before I put the dark stuff in. And I'm a little bit concerned, again, this fits in the whole tight loose brush thing. I'm a little bit concerned with accurately rendering or giving a feeling of, you know, old weathered wood, vertical boards on the side of this barn, right? I definitely want to give that impression, but I'm even more concerned with a little bit. This is the first time I've introduced pencil into this painting, so there we go. The ice is broken. Open season on pencil now. I'm more concerned with just the essence of the mark itself, how the mark itself looks. Feels, how the brushstroke feels, looks, feels. That's nice. That was a nice serendipitous event. All right, I am going to use the same palette knife. And I'm going to do the light side of this tin roof. Coming down this side will be cool blue gray. Yeah, there. And then the light side of the roof, which we can see just a tiny bit of. Whoa! That is way more than I wanted, folks. The sound of mistake, the sound of whoops. Okay, see if I can get some of that off. Oh, I know. Here's a trick. I haven't seen this very often, but I do it not infrequently. I carry a pocket knife all the time. And you could say now that this is erasing. Oh, but it's not going very well. So it's not really erasing. It's more like demolition, trying to scrape paint off. I think if I come in here with a pencil. Some unhappy grandchildren happening thing here. All right, and gang, my alarm just went off a minute ago, reminding me that I have to bid you a fond adieu in just a minute, because I have a Zoom interview that I need to grab here in just a minute.
I know we did totally an obvious turn and then totally cheated ours.
I'm not sure. I actually feel like there we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. That was a good move. No, as I often say, so the good move was I took my thumb and I just smeared that palette knife mark. And as I often say, when you smear recklessly in wet paint like that, don't get too panicky, because you can always come back and diminish the smear quite easily. Even the marks like that. There we go. So I did a palette knife, then a smear, then came back with a brush handle and drew another line. Okay, it's the abstract marks that I just added to that right there that are really making this work. I'm just about late for my appointment, so where's that? Here it is.